In this video, we uncover the shocking story of Mindy Morgan-Stern. The detectives just found a very bad crime scene. Mindy Morgan-Stern, 21, was found brutally killed in her own flat. Her neck had been cut off and all possible clues had been wiped out. There was a knife that was still in her neck. The handle was broken. There was another knife right next to her that was broken. Detectives have to do a lot of work to find the killer because they have to figure out which of the many possibilities is hiding a dirty, deadly secret. I knew her in passing. I cut it today right along here. What kind of things have you been arrested for? I mean, solid battery. I know you got a mark on your hand. How did you get that? I don't have an answer for you. Until an unexpected turn of events shows who the killer was all along. Hiding in plain sight. He thought he got away with the perfect crime. I really didn't think he was capable of anything like that. What follows comes from public police records. It's the first time most of the footage in this movie has been seen. Before we dive into the full story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're passionate about real-life crime documentaries, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new case when it's released. Your support not only helps the channel grow, but also keeps these stories alive, ensuring that the victims and their stories are never forgotten. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach and how people around the world come together to remember, reflect, and demand justice. So, leave a comment below, share your thoughts on this case, and join the conversation. Now, let's get started. Valley City, North Dakota, is having a Wednesday night on September 13, 2006. Toni Bowman and her friend Danielle Holmstrom are on their way to pick up Mindy Morgan-Stern, 21, for a night out with the girls. But Mindy's cell phone hasn't been on since the afternoon. Toni runs up the stairs and opens Mindy's door when she turns on the lights and sees Mindy lying dead on the floor with her neck cut and a white belt around her waist. She feels like she's in a nightmare. I was in my car when Toni was running out of Mindy's apartment building screaming and yelling, "I think Mindy's dead." Something around her neck. A neighbor runs to the flat when she hears the frantic screams and sees the dead body. The scared woman then calls the emergency lines. A responding cop shows up right away, but he's not ready for how violent the scene is. And I saw her laying on her back. There was a knife that was still in her neck. The handles broke off. There was another knife right next to her that was broke. There's something else that adds a strange layer to the scary sight. There is a strong smell of pines at the crime scene that can't be ignored. Pine saw bottle. It was laying in the crook of the arm of Mindy Morgan-Stern. Was it to deface the body or was it to destroy any evidence that would have been left there? There are no signs of breaking in and nothing seems to have been taken. Mindy's wallet, cell phone, and purse are all on the ground next to her. From what I could tell, it wasn't even an attack. But the police noticed something odd about the condo. Several pictures of Mindy and her friends and family are missing from a lot of picture frames. Look on the north wall. First of all, there are no pictures on the north wall. Down below, of course, there is a picture on the ground. It doesn't appear to be the glass present. Pictures are missing. There are hints that someone is crazy about Mindy, but at this point, we can't say for sure. From Mindy's friends, we know that she got home from college around 12:30 p.m. and missed Toni's call almost right away. Soon after that, people in the building say they smelt a strong pineal smell. Detectives were able to narrow down the time of the crime to that same afternoon. It was found that Mindy died between 12:45 and 1:30 p.m. after her body was sent for an autopsy. Something else that was found during the autopsy would become one of the most important clues later in the case. We did the autopsy. It appeared like there may have been skin underneath her fingernails. We clipped her fingernails and those scrapings and fingernails were sent to the state crime lab where they were analyzed. The small bits of skin under Mindy's fingernails are a significant discovery. But as the probe goes on, doubts start to form about one of the first people who saw the body. Robert Lind, the neighbor who called 911. When the police found out that Robert had done something very odd at the crime scene, it made him look twice. He actually came up and touched the body. Well, it was certainly worth it to talk to him. Investigators are asking Robert Lind, while they work on the DNA that was found under Mindy's fingernails, He is no longer just a helpful spectator. All of a sudden, investigators already know that Robert has a history of crime. With that past behind him, every word he says now is more clear. Okay, let's go back to Wednesday. You're home watching TV. You sit down for supper and then what happens? I'm sitting on the couch, I'm watching TV, and we hear abnormal noise outside because we're right in the back. And what I mean by abnormal is it wasn't normal as far as the voices go or an agitated. Robert carefully tells the police what he saw and heard. He says he heard Mindy's friends screaming and that when he got to the crime scene, one of them asked him to check on her. At first, Robert's story seems to be true until the police see that his hands are stained with cuts and scratches. It was fresh, raw, and said way too much for someone who said they were just checking for a pulse. Put your finger there. What's happening? I see you got a Band-Aid on it. Yeah, white boy Band-Aid. But that's not the only thing that makes you wonder. When the police ask for a DNA sample, Robert's answer makes the case more complicated. I didn't touch anything, with my fingers. And when I did, I knocked on the door like this. And when I opened the door, because it was a door, I opened it like this. And when I touched her arm, I touched it like this. It was an oddly detailed defense that only raised suspicions. After Robert agrees, swab samples are taken for DNA testing. However, the truth about him will not be known until the results are in. Until then, police are interested in Mindy's personal life to see if there are any problems that could have turned deadly. We started to canvass the neighborhood, conduct interviews of Mindy's friends, acquaintances. They called me in. They asked if there was anybody we thought who would want to do this to Mindy or why. And we had no idea. Anyone could be a suspect among the hundreds of sad faces. One of these faces stands out in an interesting way. Another neighbor from Mindy's building that one of her friends really likes. I remember seeing lights flashing. All of these people coming in and out, all these people gathering, people crying, people hugging. And then you see this man carrying a laundry basket like there is nothing wrong with the chaos that is going on. Concerned, Lacey tells an officer about this neighbor. When the officer looks into him, they find out that he is Maurice M.O. Gibbs, 34 years old and lives in the flat above Mindy's. M.O. helps out when they talk to him and he comes down to the station for an interview. They find out that he works as a prison guard in Barnes County. What we need to do is start eliminating people, and I know you voluntarily gave a DNA sample, and the only way we can do that is start eliminating people as suspects or had anything to do with it. The investigator also finds something about M.O. that makes them want to learn more about him. So you got an honorable discharge for dishonor. What was that for? Assault. Assault. Who did you assault? It was an assault. Okay. Somebody you shouldn't have been assaulted. Okay. How long have you worked for the sheriff's department here? Since me. And your position is called what? Correctional. Okay. What about prior to that? You ever been arrested for anything recently or all my life? What kind of things have you been arrested for? Assault, battery, shop, where were all these things at? California. This is before I even turned 18. The police then asked M.O. how he knew Mindy and what kind of relationship they had as neighbors. So, did you know Mindy well enough that you were on a first-name basis? You talked to each other all the time. Well, no. We didn't talk to each other all the time. It was in passing. Like we would see each other passing like, hey, how are you doing? But there were no long conversations. Oh, like that? Okay. But she then knew your name. Yeah, I believe so. Okay. Because she knows my wife. Okay. So, they know the whole family. Did you guys get together and visit at all? Like just to go out and hang out? Well, even in the apartment building? No, we never hung out. I was up. I went to her place one time and that was probably either a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and that was just because she was coming home and she was holding her pants, holding a laundry basket in a book bag. After hearing this, M.O. tells the police where he was in the afternoon of September 13th, the day Mindy was killed. Well, and this I've been talking with my wife because we got I might have my days mixed up on which, but I know we know that me and her talked about it. I left the apartment at 11:30 with her cuz she had to be at work at 12:30 that day, and we went to lunch. So then I dropped her off at work at around 12:35, and I came back to the apartment, and I got to the apartment between 12:45 and 1 o'clock. Where'd you guys go to lunch? I'm gonna guess and say Burger King. But it's we do so many things hard to remember. Oh yeah, that's a week down the road here, and I know it's you went back to the apartment building. Yeah. Okay. So what time did you get him back to the apartment building? I said between 12:45. Even though MO has been cooperative and the cops respect him, the detectives are still not sure who he really is because of something in his past. Detectives let him go because they don't know anything else that links him to the crime scene. Mindy's murder is slowly becoming an open case, meaning that anyone could have been hiding their horrible crime. Detectives will keep a close eye on the people who were most important to Mindy, the ones she trusted and talked to every day. That's when her boyfriend Jordan Raynham shows up. Since Jordan and Mindy have been dating for more than a year, the police need to look into it more thoroughly. Look, we want to talk to you about the night before and then take us right to the day. Okay. So you were the night before. That would have been the evening of the 12th. Okay. We went out to stop and go. We got something to drink. We rented a movie. It was called Inside Man. We got home. We watched it. Next one. She got exactly 10:45. Jordan told the police that he had only talked to Mindy once on the 13th, and that was strange in and of itself. She often called or texted Jordan to tell her about every little thing that happened during the day. That's why her sudden silence wasn't just strange. It scared him deeply. He tells police that he was working on the family farm when Mindy was killed, which helps them figure out where he was. In addition, he doesn't think twice when police ask for DNA samples and a polygraph. He agrees with both. At least on the surface, this move makes it look like he has nothing to hide. Detectives don't need to keep him on the suspect list because of the results. The fact that he helped and the fact that his background is clean, so they don't think it's her boyfriend, which takes away a key name from the case. While that is true, it doesn't help clear up the case much. As the lack of certainty grows, a new lead appears. Mindy's friends tell us that Jordan wasn't the only important person in her life. It turned out that she wasn't really over Kyle Kuznia, her ex-boyfriend, and whatever was going on between them is enough for police to look into it more. Someone comes in to talk to Kyle 3 days after Mindy was killed. Tell me how your relationship developed and what happened. Let's see. I said we dated for about 2.5 to 3 years. And over that time period, it was, really hard and kind of a rocky relationship. And mainly I was just my own personal opinion, but her ex-boyfriend seemed like he was always kind of in the picture, whether they were talking on the phone or because he was, not to say obsessed, but was definitely, had feelings for her still after they broke up. Kyle says something that not many people like about Mindy. Kyle says Mindy was interested in other guys while she was with him. And it seemed like any time I would chat with one of my friends that was a female that I'd known for maybe our freshman year up through our senior year, she seemed like she would get a little jealous. She would yell at me about it, and I tell her to relax. I said it's like we've known each other for 3.5 years, and I said there's no feelings, no nothing. I said we're just talking about, the basketball game last night or something. And so I'd bring it up to her as far as, I said, so, is it wrong for me to get upset with you if you're still talking to your ex-boyfriend compared to just a friend I've had before? Obviously, you were in the picture. And I'm just trying to think kind of really after that, finding another girl or female in the car. The interview with Kyle shows a complex picture with feelings of jealousy, confusion, and stress. The police know Kyle isn't a sure thing, but before they end their conversation with him, Kyle tells them something shocking. She was a very flirty young lady. Have you had any other contact with her? No. Like I said, I don't remember receiving any phone calls that I didn't take or anything like that. I know she would kind of work or get information kind of through my dad or whatever. It seemed like he and she would continue to talk, and he'd call me and say, Mindy's, this is going on or this is going on. And I even asked my dad, too. I said, I would appreciate it if you just stopped talking to her. That's kind of weird. Police are very interested in that new information. Detectives don't understand why an old married man was talking to a college student, especially since the man called Mindy so often and for such long periods of time that it made even Kyle uncomfortable. I said, because really, Dad, I said, it's even tearing our relationship apart. I said, it's like I don't want you talking to her. And I said, what are you, 10, 20 years down the road, you guys are still going to be talking and, Candace and I will maybe be married and having a couple grandkids and you're still going to be talking to my, ex-girlfriend. I said, that's kind of weird. It is kind of weird. Yeah. I think back in June or July, I told him that I said, you stop talking to her. I said, unfortunately, I just won't come home for 2 years. And I said, and you can tell mom and the siblings and brothers and sisters why. 2 big puzzle pieces were left out by Kyle's conversation. 1, Mindy was interested in more than one guy while she was engaged to Kyle. It doesn't become suspicious until police can link it to something they find at the crime scene. Mindy's shots are gone. When detectives see the smashed photo frames of Mindy, they can't help but wonder, could it have been a secret lover from the past who was crazy about her? Roger Kuznia, Kyle's dad, was the second knot. Detectives call Rodney in for a friendly chat, but they really want to find out more about him and the shady relationship he had with her. You and Mindy became, you call it, friends. She dated your son, correct? I don't understand the relationship that you have with her after your son broke up. Well, you definitely were quite the bubbly character. She understands that her actions put it well. She reminded me so much of my wife in her younger days. Okay. Said like it was, if she didn't like you, she low or something was wrong with you, said that you person like that. It doesn't make sense to compare Mindy to his wife when she was younger. It blurs the lines and makes me wonder how they are connected. For the police, it smells like an addiction. Then comes the information that makes them sure they are right. According to the police, one of the last calls Mindy got on the night she was killed was from Rodney. Detectives are not happy with the voicemail. This makes them wonder if it was real sadness or a planned attempt to change how people saw him after the fact. No matter what the truth is, the police can't just let Rodney go. His DNA is gathered and Rodney Kuznia is now an official and important part of the story. At this time in the investigation, we had some really good suspects, which would be the ex-boyfriend Kyle, his father, Rodney, Jay, and M.O. We had to keep eyes on all 4 of these suspects until the DNA samples came back. Shades of doubt grow around the case as the number of suspects does. And while the investigation goes on, people outside of the police office take a moment to mourn. The funeral for Mindy is a very sad scene. Detectives are sent quietly to Mindy's funeral to watch in the hopes that it will reveal something that the interrogations haven't. But if the killer is really there in a room full of sad people, they fit right in. To this point, detectives have only one thing to go on: the DNA findings. The most important thing that will solve this puzzle is now Mindy's last fight with her killer, in which she scratched the killer. For main suspects are now in the sights of the police. But as they think about what to do next, another tip comes in from a very strange place. As law enforcement is gathering and following up on leads, it turns out one of the leads was actually provided by Mindy prior to her death. Brad Cruff, the district attorney, says that 2 to 3 weeks before the murder, Mindy had called the police, making them think that someone was following her. That detail, which was once written off as anxiety, now has a very scary feel to it. Detectives find Mindy's coworker after more research. The tip points to a man who lives across the street from Roby's. They are now very aware of someone who seems sketchy. Detectives are ready to learn more about a man who has been quietly hanging out around the edges of the case. So they catch him and ask him, "Do you live anywhere else besides in your camper?" No. Okay. Kind of a loner, are you? You could say I'm a drifter, but yeah, I'm kind of a loner. Have you ever had any kind of trouble with the law? None. Have you ever eaten at do you ever go up for coffee or anything at Roby's? Nope. That's one place I have never been to. Never been in Roby's. Nope. Right across the street from you. I know. They've been in almost all the other restaurants, but not there. MHM. Why is that? I don't have an answer for you. Remember what you were doing on Wednesday? On Wednesday? MHM. I was here. You hear what I say? Did you know this girl? Not at all. They notice something else about him besides how he acts in the interview room, which is strange. He got a new scratch on his arm. I know you got a mark on your hand. How did you get that? When I put that oil filter on, it was kind of a tight squeeze to get your yeah. Here's the deal. We questioned a lot of people, and every person that we've talked to so far has been extremely cooperative with us, such as you have been with these questions that we've asked. Sure. I'd like to help you find whoever did. Did you have anything to do with this girl's death? I haven't killed anyone. Have you ever? And I didn't kill her. With that, the number of suspects has now reached 5. The guy from across the street, Robert Lind, Kalnaya, Rodney Kuznia, M.O. Gibbs, and all of them are now people who are being looked into in Mindy's case. 5 days after the murder, on September 18, 2006, DNA tests were done on all 5 candidates. The results break the tension with a single truth that shocks everyone involved in the case. There is so much shock when the name is revealed that the DNA is checked twice to be sure. The outcome is the same both times, though. Someone who had been there from the start and was easy to see. Someone the officers know and trust is now linked to the worst crime in the area, which shocks them. 4 of the samples came back negative and 1 of the samples came back a positive match. That DNA was ran twice just to verify that the DNA was correct. The DNA that came back positive pointed towards a person in the community that a lot of people knew and trusted. Based on the DNA samples taken from Mindy's nails, M.O. Gibbs, a corrections officer in Barnes County, is the person who fits the mold. As soon as M.O. gets back to the station, agents will try to get him to confess without letting on that his secret is out in the open. Regarding Mindy's death, do you intend to truthfully answer those questions? Yes. Between the ages of 21 and 33, do you remember hurting someone on purpose? No. During the first 33 years of your life, do you remember forcing a girl to have sex with you? No. The detective already thinks Mo's story isn't telling the whole truth, but he decides to trap him even more by giving him a new task. This one is meant to make Mo's mind race and force him to break the act he's been carefully putting together. You said you have no idea how Mindy died or anything. Is that correct? Other than what you heard that she had her throat cut. But other than that, you wouldn't have any idea of anything that happened? No. To her? No. Okay. You have no idea if, she was tied up or she was... Well, I've heard it wasn't. Okay. But you don't know. You shouldn't know. Was she tied up or anything like that? No. Okay. You don't know if she was suffocated with a blanket or anything like that, or with a plastic bag, or whether she was choked or anything like that? No. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make up another 8 questions, and what they're going to be are different things that she could have been with. And again, I'll go over with you. Only the person that was actually in there should know that. Didn't you weren't in there, so you shouldn't know any of this. Okay. All right. Okay. Which of the following items is wrapped around Bendy's neck? A rope? No. A bra? No. A pair of pants? No. A pair of nylons? No. A shoelace? No. A belt? No. A hose? No. A clothes hanger? No. M.O. doesn't know that he failed the test 3 times yet, but he still won't admit to doing this horrible thing. So, detectives end the polygraph test and let the evidence and results talk for themselves. Well, there's a little bit of indication there that something is bothering you about this, and, I guess I just want to try and get it resolved. Boing about what? Well, like for example, you claim you didn't know anything about, what was wrapped around her neck and that, but yet when I asked you about the belt, you really reacted to it. And I guess I'm just sort of wondering why that was. I just answered, truthfully, I don't know. Okay. Did you have any type of relationship going with Mindy or anything? And I know you just got married and you may be afraid to talk about it, but if you did, we need to know about it so we can explain the reactions here. What do you know about DNA? Nothing. Nothing. And you let him take a swab from me to match against DNA. Yeah. How would you feel if I told you that your DNA matches DNA that we found on Mindy's body? I'd be like that wasn't true. So I know I wasn't there. So okay, DNA is pretty specific. Down to millions of people. Yeah, I understand that. And somewhere along the line, Mindy scratched the person that attacked her. Your DNA is matching what we found on her under her fingernail. You tell me then, how did scrapings or your skin get under her fingernails? How could that have happened? You tell me. I know nothing about the name. I know I wasn't. The only way it could have gotten their mole was through contact. It's clear that M.O. is trapped. But what he never ever thought would happen is that the DNA test also showed another dark truth about his past that is now in the detective's file. The DNA that they matched that they brought up, it also matches the DNA that was found on a girl that was assaulted 2 years ago in Fargo. Okay, 2 years ago in Fargo. Yep, In 2004, during the time period you were in Fargo. A case that was never solved because the person who did it was never found until now. It was Mo Gibbs after all. Everyone in the officers group knows Mo and thinks of him as a smart and professional coworker. Mo is given many chances to tell them the truth, but he is sure that he had nothing to do with the murder. The police can't figure out what to do next, so they arrest Mo on charges of first-degree murder. Could you stand up please and your channel behind your back? We have an arrest warrant for the murder of many. So what do you think, Dave, about this type of Mo? Honestly, I was shocked. I knew Mo personally, but I knew that the evidence and the DNA didn't lie. I knew that Mo had done it. Even though the police are shocked that one of their own did such a horrible thing, things are about to get worse. In the end, the Valley City Police Department finds out that Mo Gibbs changed his name from Glendale Morgan Jr. in 2005 and had been in jail for 5 years for his part in a drive-by shooting. After another, all the bad things he had been keeping from everyone his whole life came out. 6 more women from Barnes County Prison come forward after he is charged to say that Mo Gibbs raped them while he was a guard there. Mo Gibbs is accused of killing someone and assaulting 7 other people. He pleads guilty to sexual attack, but he is still being tried for killing Mindy. A DNA expert for the defense says at the trial that Mo's DNA was only touched when he helped Mindy with her laundry, which ends the trial prematurely, but it turns out to be Mo's last-ditch effort to defend himself. They brought in a director of a DNA lab who was actually Quincy's lab assistant on that old Quincy television show. He was their star witness. Later, it turns out that this so-called expert was really an actor from a crime show who was running a fake crime lab. Maurice Mo Gibbs was found guilty of killing Mindy Morgenstern on November 11, 2007. He was found guilty of first-degree murder on November 20, 2007. But he never said he was the one who did it and never told the truth about that day. Mo was given a sentence of life in jail without the chance of getting out. He is being held at the North Dakota State Penitentiary in Bismarck, North Dakota right now. The murder of Mindy Morgenstern shook her community to its core. She was young, kind, full of promise, someone whose light touched everyone around her. Her life was stolen far too soon, but her memory continues to inspire those who knew her to fight for justice, safety, and change. Stories like Mindy's remind us that evil can hide in plain sight, but they also show us the power of courage, compassion, and community. People who refuse to let her name fade away. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you for taking the time to remember Mindy. Please like this video, subscribe for more true crime documentaries, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new case. And tell me in the comments what you think needs to change to prevent tragedies like this from happening again. Until next time, stay safe, look out for one another, and I'll see you in the next. In this video, we uncover the shocking story of the Haight family. A family that appeared perfect on the outside, but hid a dark and terrifying reality. On January 4, 2023, in the Utah small town of Enoch, the Haight family's simple house is situated on a peaceful street that is often filled with the sound of children laughing. There are still Christmas lights on the front of the building. There are cars parked outside the house, but there's no light inside. No one in the family went outside that morning. Michael Haight's phone didn't answer when neighbors called and Tasha missed an important meeting. Friends began to worry. It was strange and scary that a whole family could just disappear without a trace. By nightfall, someone had called the cops. Around 900, patrol cops showed up. There was no answer when they walked around the house, knocked on doors, and called out names. Nothing showed that someone had broken in. The blinds were up. One of the side doors wasn't locked. The police came in. It was dark inside. A meal that was sitting on the table was not eaten. Holiday stuff was set up in a corner. The house seemed to be empty and very quiet. The police went from one room to another. There are pictures of Michael, Tasha, and their 5 kids on the walls. Their first stop was in a bedroom. After a few minutes, a short word was sent over the radio and help was called. The area was soon closed off. There was no question about what the police found inside. There was no one else in the house who could take calls. While detectives took pictures of the scene inside the house, neighbors stood outside in shock. The Haters had always been a great family to them. There are about 8,000 people living in the small town of Enoch in southern Utah. Everyone there knows families like theirs. People there will greet you on the street and offer to help you even if you don't ask. People often said that Michael and Tosha were trustworthy and well-liked. Michael had a job as an insurance agent. His clients said he was well-organized, friendly, and sure of himself. He was very involved in his local Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Other men looked up to him as a loyal believer with a strong stand. Many people thought he was the perfect dad because he was strict but fair, controlled, and took care of his family. Tasha Haight was in charge of the family home and kids. She had a degree in child development and spent all of her time with her family. People knew her as a calm, nice woman who was always willing to help. Ta regularly went to church events, volunteered, and helped set up meetings and school programs. They had 5 kids together. Apple, the oldest, was 17 years old and in high school. She planned to go to college. Briley, who is 12 years old, sang in school shows. Ammon and Sienna, twins, who were 7 years old, went to elementary school. Gavin, who is 4 years old, had just started preschool. The family looked like they were very close. Vacations, sports, and holiday pictures taken together. From the outside, it looks like a normal American life with everything going as planned and no problems. Michael often coached youth sports teams or worked on things in the garden with his kids, as seen by his neighbors. At school, Tasha went to meetings and drove everyone to after-school clubs. The Haight house looked clean, and in the evenings, game sounds could be heard coming from the windows. Rarely did they make people suspicious. People who had lived next door for years couldn't say that there was anything strange going on inside those walls. This kind of thing doesn't happen very often in Enoch. There isn't much crime in this small, quiet town between Salt Lake City and Las Vegas. Most people in the area know each other through work, church, or school, and word gets around quickly. Not a word was said in the Haights, though. Everything looked great from the outside. A dad with a steady job, a mom who loves her kids, a solid income, faith, and a small town. No one saw the red flags. Even close friends with whom the Haights had parties and picnics didn't know that there was a different side to the couple that was hiding behind the image of a perfect dad and caring husband. This family really did look great. Later, photos shown in news stories show people with smiles, neat haircuts, and clothes that match. They made an atmosphere of peace. But what was really going on didn't fit with any idea of family well-being. When the police went into the house on January 4th, no one in the neighborhood could have guessed that there was a closed, tense, and dangerous world behind this stable exterior. The ideal father and dedicated husband mask a system of fear, control, and submission that not even the closest friends could see. What at the time seemed like a desirable trait turned out to be proof of how easy it is to miss signs of aggressive behavior in someone who takes great care of their looks. Even though things looked good on the outside, the first signs of trouble started to show up in 2020. That year, the oldest daughter, 14-year-old Macy, called the cops with a report. She said that her father wasn't just strict, he was also mean. Put her and her mother down, watched them, and during one fight, he almost choked her. Calling the police was the first step in the probe. Michael said that the whole thing was caused by a family misunderstanding and claimed that he and his daughter did not communicate clearly. But he did say that he didn't hurt his daughter. He also said that he had read his wife's messages on her phone without her approval. "I wanted to know if they were talking about me behind my back," he said to explain it. Macy gave a full account of what happened. She talked about how her father constantly yelled and insulted her, and how he limited her mother's movements by not letting her leave the house without warning and listening in on her calls and texts. He grabbed her by the neck and squeezed it so hard that she thought she was going to pass out at the time the report was made. There were signs of physical violence, but the case was more complicated than it looked. The police talked to the mother. Tasha didn't say they didn't have problems with each other. However, like her husband, she said that they had a mistake. She didn't want to make an official report, and she asked that her husband not be arrested. Michael was stressed out but not a threat, she said. She made it clear that she thought he cared about the family and the kids. It became clear later that this was how common it was for people who were being a home to protect them out of fear and dependence. Officers have to figure out the amount of risk in situations like this. There was an 11-question list at the time. 3 main things were looked at: whether the partner had used a weapon, threatened to break the law, or made it seem like he might kill. This is what Tasha said. No to all 3. The result was changed by her confidence. There were 11 questions and only 2 got positive replies. Michael could get a gun and the couple had lived apart for a while before. That wasn't thought to be enough to label the family as high risk. In the end, the police only gave a warning. Michael was told not to listen in on his wife's private conversations or follow her around. He agreed to these terms and acted peacefully, which was enough for the system to say that the conflict was over. Records made later showed that no other steps were taken. Michael's gun wasn't taken away and the family wasn't put under constant surveillance. Todd had started going to therapy, but she stopped talking to the police because she thought that getting involved could scare Michael and make him act out even more. There was a system problem. The police followed the rules, but in situations like this, a formal review doesn't always show how dangerous things really are. Threats of violence rarely start with domestic violence. It changes through being controlled, being alone, and being pushed down. It was clear that something was wrong with the Haight family, but it wasn't properly marked as an emergency. Macy kept living with the man she was afraid of in the same house. Tosha acted like everything was fine. In fact, there was a new order in the house. Less talking and more being careful. The official end of the war was reached. But that's when the family's first crack appeared. Another crack that got bigger every year. From the outside, things looked calm after the 2020 police reaction. Michael Haight was able to persuade everyone that what had happened was an accident caused by stress in the family. Most people believed him when he said he was a man under pressure and a loving father. The cops did not look into the case again, and it was marked as resolved within the family and the records. It looked like the fight was over at the time. Michael went back to living a normal life. He worked in insurance and went to church and neighborhood events. He smiled in pictures again, went to Christmas parties, and acted like nothing had happened. People in the town always wanted a stable family with a clean home, children, and community activity. No one thought that the mood inside the Haight home had changed. Control got less obvious, but it didn't go away. Michael kept looking at his phones and following his wife around, asking that she be held responsible. He was more careful this time. There was no argument, no loud noise, and nothing to draw attention to itself. The older daughter, Macy, tried to stay away. She tried not to bother her dad and stayed out of their talks. The younger ones didn't fully understand what was going on, but they could feel the stress. The house stopped being a place where people could talk freely. The talks got shorter. Topics are limited. There were rumors going around in Enoch where people often share news. Some people who know the family noticed that Michael was getting angrier and less social. They said he didn't like it when Tosha talked or stayed out late without asking him first. Others remembered how he would sometimes get very angry when jokes were made about him at community events. Even though none of this looked directly dangerous, it made me feel uncomfortable. Michael did everything he could to keep up his image as a great husband. He helped with church events, taught youth sports teams, and worked on projects to make the neighborhood better. Any talk of a past fight was taken personally by him. People in his group still trusted him, and even though some knew about the call to the police in 2020, it was quickly forgotten. Tasha pulled farther away from everyone and everything. When talking to close friends, she only said general things like, "We're okay. We're getting by." In fact, her husband's power grew stronger. From the outside, he stayed calm and polite, which made what she said about the pressure sound less real. The family looked very good again from the outside. The kids went to school and played sports. The family often went to church. People still thought they could count on Michael, but no one knew that behind the calm exterior, a system of complete control had taken over. That quiet had to be kept for Tosha and her children. Any argument made Michael angry, even if he didn't show it to other people. Although he didn't hit, he pushed with his tone, stare, and demand that they follow through. It was important to pick each word with care. Fear turned into a habit over time, and staying quiet became the only way to avoid a fight. That stability from the outside continued for almost 3 years. As long as the people in Enoch looked to the Hates as an example, they didn't know that a new wave of violence was building up behind those gates. Even though the silence looked like peace, it was actually the start of a terrible disaster. Outward peace in the Hate home was finally shown to be a lie by the end of 2022. After being controlled all the time for years, Tasha finally did what she'd been putting off for a long time. She filed for divorce. The process began in the middle of December. She hired a lawyer, did the paperwork, and on December 21st, she gave legal notice. She saw that she could change her life and break out of the loop for the first time in a long time. Michael found out about the split while he was at work on December 27th. He had a sharp but calm response. He told close friends and family that his wife was acting strangely and was making things worse than they really were. He said he had the same rights to the house as everyone else, so he wouldn't leave. Even though his wife asked them to stay away from each other, he moved into the basement and stayed on the property. Tasha didn't trust herself. Gail Earl, her 78-year-old mother, moved in with her daughter to help her and take care of their children. That choice was very important. Now, there was someone inside the house who could see what was going on outside. Gail tried to stay close by when Michael went upstairs, so she wouldn't leave her daughter with him by herself. But it didn't work. Michael kept controlling their area and how they interacted with each other. He behaved in a way that sounds like an ub who is losing control during those weeks. He first tried to talk his wife out of the divorce, and then he blamed her for ruining the family. He became cold and unreliable over time. From the outside, it looked like they were trying to save the marriage. But Tasha saw it as just another form of stress. Before the holidays, she did everything she could to keep her son and girls from noticing how tense things were. The house was decked out. In the sitting room, there was a tree. There was music. Things seemed to be fine in the outside world. But people who knew Tasha well said she looked tired. She kept going to therapy and talked to him about safe ways to end the marriage. There was no longer any trust in their relationship. At that point, Michael was aware that he was losing power, which he could not stand. Later, the analysis would show that this is when he started planning the terrible things that would happen. Psychologists stress that the time when two people are no longer together in a relationship is the most dangerous for those who are under household control. The aggressor's loss of control over the partner is the same as falling apart as a person. Studies show that the highest number of crimes happen during or soon after a breakup in homes where there was a lot of control and aggression. In that case, Michael Haight became a clear example. A very small group of people in Enoch knew that the Haight family could no longer get along. The bright holiday lights on the outside of the house covered up what was really going on. Someone who doesn't want to let her start a new life and someone who does. Things looked fine in the Haight home 5 days before the terrible event. The kids were getting ready to go back to school. Michael was still living in the basement and Tasha spent time with her mother. For all the calm that seemed to be there, work had already started on getting ready. He planned every single thing he did. After the probe, it was found that Michael started looking for information about guns and gunfire as early as December 30th, 2022. He looked up questions like, can neighbors hear gunshots, and how loud is a .40 caliber inside a house? He looked into the specs of the pistol, the sound levels in the room, and what would happen if he shot someone in a small area. There was no question after reading this. He was carefully making plans for the crime. At the same time, Tosha talked about her fear more often. Just a few days before she died, she talked to her doctor about how Michael seemed tense. He had stopped talking, but she could tell he was still watching her. Also, she called the police and said she didn't feel safe. Officers confirmed that a gun had been taken from the house, but that was all they did. Another daughter, Macy, also saw the changes. In the evening of January 3rd, she sent a friend a message saying, "Dad is acting weird tonight." She had seen her dad walking around the house without saying what he wanted to say. She was uncomfortable, but didn't know what to say. That message was the last time anyone from the family heard from anyone else. Investigators were able to put together a mental profile of Michael after the accident by listening to a lot of different accounts. He wasn't a man whose life had broken him. His acts were well thought out. He planned every move with cold reason. He was too proud to accept that he had lost his wife, boys, and daughters. He couldn't accept that his wife had left him. So he chose to get his power back in the worst way possible by killing the people he thought were to blame for his shame. Tasha tried to stay calm until the very end for the sake of her sons and girls. She wanted a friendly divorce and a new start, but Michael had already decided what was right and wrong. He deleted texts, hid what he did online, and carefully planned everything. What seemed like calmness on the outside was really a passion on the inside. The last 5 days of the Eudeo case were a perfect example of the last stage of control for an UB when the fear of losing power turns into a plan to hurt the victim. Michael didn't just do what he felt like. He carefully planned what he would say and was determined to get the last word. While everyone else in town was getting ready for the holiday, things were getting worse inside the Haight home. While the Haight family was out on the evening of January 3, 2023, it looked like any other winter night. Both of the kids went to bed early. The next day, they had to get up for school. Gail Earl, Tasha's mom, and she were in the sitting room. Michael was in the basement where he had been living for a few weeks since the divorce papers were filed. He set a record on his phone that night. It turned out that the audio file was just over 70 minutes long. You can hear sounds from around the house, like the kids' words and short conversations between the couple. It seemed like a normal chat at first. They talk about everyday things. Then Michael changes the subject to the breakup and money issues. In his talk, he talks about bills, the house, and the kids' future. Tosha answers quietly and without arguing. She says she just wants things to be calm and for him to leave the house. On the recording, it's easy to hear her say, "I don't feel safe around you." He quickly replies, "You're overreacting." And then the conversation stops. After that, you hear footsteps moving inside the house. Then you hear the voices of children. Michael says they'll go sledding tomorrow if the weather is nice. He sounds sure of himself and relaxed like nothing is going on. That recording was the last thing that showed how the family lived. Later, the investigation proved that Michael started doing what he was doing right after they talked. The crime was started by him between 3 and 4 a.m. on January 4th, according to evidence from experts. At about 3:30 a.m., a neighbor across the street heard a few loud bangs. He thought someone was setting off fireworks. No one paid much attention because many people were still having fun with the new year. No one in the house went outside for several hours after that. The children had not gone to school by the 4th of January morning. Michael didn't come to work and Tasha didn't go to her therapy appointment. When her friends tried to call, her phone was out of range. Around 4 p.m. in the late afternoon, police from the area returned to the scene. The house looked great. There were still cars parked in the yard and Christmas lights on the house. A side door that wasn't locked was found. There was a search when police officers came in. They found the bodies in the first room. There were 8 people inside in total. Some of the people who died were Tosha, her mother Gail Earl, and their 5 children. Macy, 17, Briley, 12, the twins Ammon and Sienna, 7, and Gavin, 4. Michael was lying on his own next to a gun. The positions of the bodies and the lack of signs of fighting showed that the crimes were planned and carried out in a certain order. A forensic medical report showed that all of them had been shot from close range and died. The file says that most of the family members were in their rooms, probably asleep. Blankets were put over the little ones. A gun was found next to Tasha and Gail's bed in their bedroom, but they didn't have time to use it. Michael had already taken out all the other guns from the house. The search showed that he had done a lot of planning. A note, bank papers, his driver's license, and other papers were left in one spot. Michael wrote in the note that he could not take this pain any longer and that he thought his wife was killing the family. He said in his writing that he would rather end his life than let anyone hurt it. The police decided that this was not a breakdown. He timed it, took away any possible defenses, and planned the order of events. He killed himself with the gun after he was done with the crimes. The house was blocked off after the cops finished their investigation. An expert team worked late into the night. Everyone in the neighborhood couldn't believe what had happened. It looked like any other family the day before with lights on the yard and pictures on the walls. It was now the site of a terrible accident. The lights on the front of the building were still on when the bodies were taken away in the evening of January 4th. It was still quiet inside, just like when the police first walked in. Now though, that silence meant something different. It meant fear, not peace. The local newspaper wrote an obituary for Michael Haight a few days after the tragedy. It said he was a loving husband, caring father, and active part of the community. It didn't say that he had killed his wife, 5 children, and his mother-in-law. A lot of people were angry about the article on social media. Some people said that the editing staff washed the criminal's name and erased the victim's memories. Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action and an activist, brought attention to the issue and openly asked that the obituary be taken down. The story was taken down after she spoke out, and the newspaper apologized. This case showed how society often idealizes men who seem good on the outside while ignoring the fact that they have been violent in the past. People thought Michael Haight was a great family man and churchgoer, but they didn't notice the red flags that had been there for years. When the study was over, new information came to light. The Haight family had caught the attention of child safety workers just 11 days before the crimes. The cause was an event that had been kept secret. Michael got very angry and picked up and threw his 7-year-old son, Ammon, to the ground. Macy again asked for help and reported the threatening behavior. The official report said that Tasha met with the child welfare expert. She didn't say she didn't agree with Michael's aggressive behavior, but she asked that no one talk to him until the split was over. At the end of their talk, she asked, "Are we safe?" This question would later have a sad meaning. According to the story, those words were said in a calm but uneasy way. No one knew at that point that the answer was already clear. It wasn't marked as a high-risk case. The divorce had not yet been finalized, so officials chose to wait. The choice that was made was just one more chance that was lost. The agencies, the cops, and the courts all did what they were supposed to do. But no one was responsible for figuring out how dangerous things really were. Later, experts would stress that this kind of situation often causes the system to pick up on individual danger signs, but not put them together to form a full picture. The stories from Tasha and her children about their violent father were not seen as warning signs of impending danger. Statistics show how big the problem is. Every 3.5 weeks on average, someone is killed in the United States because they were connected to the victim. The trend is usually the same. People report things, warnings are ignored, and then nothing is done. The story of the Haight family showed that this wasn't a random act of violence, but the result of long-term household control, which is something that society too often thinks of as a private family matter. There were signs, but no one paid attention to them. After the tragedy, the Haight home became a sign of how cruel people can be, even when they look nice. In Enoch, funerals were held for the dead. Friends and family brought flowers and toys to the front garden. The investigation was over quickly. There was no question about the facts. The case was written into formal records as an example of a failure in the system. The police were aware of the problems. The complaints were written down by child welfare workers, but no one stopped things from getting worse. On the surface, things looked stable, but there was damage that no one wanted to see until it was too late. Thank you for watching and spending your time here today. Your support means the world. Every view, comment, and share helps this channel grow and allows us to continue creating content that explores the darker corners of human behavior, encourages awareness, and reminds us all to stay vigilant. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, tap the bell icon, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a new video. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Your feedback, thoughts, and engagement help strengthen this community and allow us to reach more people who care about truth, safety, and awareness. Until next time, stay aware, stay cautious, and trust your instincts.